Welcome to the tutorial for Huckleberry, a dark and weird tabletop role-playing game set in the mythology of the American Old West. In this tutorial, we'll walk through everything you need to know to start playing. The game focuses on creating blockbuster cinematic moments without getting bogged down in the small details. Every role matters, every choice has consequences, and the weird is always watching, ready to corrupt everything it touches. You play as mavericks, occult bounty hunters who make it their living confronting the monstrosities that the weird creates. These are hard individuals who dare to defy the darkness in an unforgiving landscape where water is scarce, greed runs rampant, and the law exists only as far as a sheriff is willing to ride. To play Huckleberry, you need 2 sets of traditional gaming dice. That's D4s through D20s, along with 4 tokens to represent aces. Poker chips or actual playing card aces work perfectly. The game master, called the TRAILBOSS in Huckleberry, will also need a full deck of playing cards. In this tutorial, we'll cover how to create your Maverick, the core mechanics that drive the game, how combat works, the gear that keeps you alive, and some essential advice for trail bosses running the game. Sections for this video will be displayed on the left, and timestamps will let you jump around with ease. Now let's saddle up and ride into the wild frontier. Let's walk through how to create a player character, or a Maverick as the case may be here. Step 1 is to determine your traits: blood, flesh, calling, and disposition. Before we hop in, I'd suggest that if you planned on playing this game at a physical table and you wanted to use the official character sheet, that you copy and paste all of your chosen traits into the official form-fillable PDF rather than write all the traits down by hand. You'll see what I mean in a minute. There are 4 kinds of traits in the game, the first being your blood trait. This represents your heritage or ancestry. And since this is the Weird West, it gets pretty weird. You're either a damned soul, a devil child, a fey child, a hexen, ironclad, leech, a normal or natural, a psychic, pyrokinetic, shaman, or a skin changer. Most of these blood traits come with supernatural abilities as well as limitations or drawbacks. Check out the skin changer, for example. You can change your body to have any of these animalistic features at the beginning of any quest or mission, or what we call a drive, and you can roll for a chance to turn into any kind of big animal about once per game session or stretch. But you have an aversion to silver, which is to say that you're going to take twice as much damage from silver weapons as normal. Next up is to choose your flesh trait. These are physical characteristics that give you one kind of advantage or another, and there are 12 to choose from. Ambidextrous, for example, lets you attack with 2 main weapons at the same time, with a few reasonable limitations. The next trait that you choose is your disposition, which represents your Maverick's personality and influences how they interact with the world. There are a little over a dozen of these, and the one thing they all have in common is that they give you a special mechanic when spending an ace, as well as how to obtain an ace. We'll cover aces in a minute, but they're basically the meta currency of this game, and you're spending them and gaining them constantly throughout the course of play, so your disposition here is probably going to come up a lot. You may notice that you have a spot on the character sheet for 2 dispositions. This is to accommodate the natural blood trait, which starts with 2, and the fact that any Maverick can pick up a second disposition trait if they spend enough downtime philosophizing. And that's a technical term, by the way. Finally, when creating your Maverick, you'll choose a calling. These are talents that your Maverick has learned over their lifetime thus far, and there are 14 to choose from. Some might come up a lot, while others are evoked maybe once per stretch or even once per season, which is 6 stretches. Now, you might be wondering about this legend box on your character sheet, but you're going to have to hold your horses. A Maverick won't pick up a legend trait unless they've spent several of their pastimes between jobs training up on their big iron or main weapon. It might be well worth the investment though, because the 14 possible legend traits each give your Maverick a significant leg up in combat. Step 2, attributes. The next thing you want to do is assign dice to your 4 core attributes: quick, grit, reckon, and spirit. Huckleberry uses a step dice system for just about all your stats. So in this case, you're going to assign a D12 to any one stat, and then a D10, a D8, and a D6 in the other 3 as you see fit. You will also set your Wyrd Die to D10. We'll get to the Wyrd Die in a minute. Step 3, skills. The next thing you want to assign are your skills. There are 9 skills in total, and they're defined by step dice. You'll assign 1 skill at D10, 4 skills at D8, and 4 at D6. If the D10 skill is not brawl, handguns, or long guns, choose one of those 3 and assign them as a D8. Then choose 3 more skills to upgrade to a D8. Step 4, your big iron. Big irons in this game aren't necessarily always big, nor are they always iron. It's just a name for your main weapon. This could be a rifle, revolver, shotgun, bow, or even knife, war club, or tomahawk. There are tons of upgrades that you can buy for your big irons, but when starting out, you'll probably just want to pick one of these pre-built packages. Notice that each of these packages comes with 2 big irons, which is to say you start with 2 weapons. Here's a full breakdown of what a big iron looks like on your character sheet. You've got the name of the weapon, then ammo if it uses it. Note that a revolver starts with an ammo max of 3. Ammo doesn't track the actual number of bullets or arrows that you have. It's an abstract concept that tracks the number of credible attacks you can make with a weapon before it needs to reload. There are 2 damage ratings for any weapon: a base damage that is delivered when you land a hit, and a critical damage that you can add to your base damage if you spend aces to inflict critical. Type is where you would write down what kind of damage the weapon inflicts, and there are 5 types of damage in the game. Range is important because a big iron can't cause damage to targets beyond its listed range. There are 5 range bands in the game. Actually, if you attack with a big iron closer than the weapon's effective range, you actually swap the weapon's base and critical damage, so it will do less damage if you're too close, unless you spend 2 aces to add the critical damage. Skill tells you which skill you roll with when using the weapon. Chips tell you the weapon's worth. Mods are where you record any upgrades to the weapon, and tags are general descriptor words for the weapon. Step 5, your ride. When starting out, your Maverick gets either a mule, a horse, or a buggy pulled by a stock animal. Step 6, your gear. Gear in Huckleberry is abstracted a bit because the game is aiming to be more cinematic and less simulationist. Kit, in this case, is the name of specialized gear that has a mechanical impact in the game and can be used once or maybe more than once per stretch, depending on your wealth level. Those kits get replenished once your Maverick returns to their home base, called the Hole in the Wall. Really powerful or special kit is one use only, but your Maverick starts only with the normal replenishable kind. They also start with some other standard gear called caboodle. This is normal gear that every Maverick in the Weird West would undoubtedly have on their person at all times, all conveniently packaged into a war bag. The idea here is that Huckleberry wants to be cinematic in nature and not have you worry about whether or not you actually have the stuff needed to start a fire or hog-tie a bad guy. You just have the caboodle for all that business. Step 7, your wealth. You track money in 2 different ways in the game. The first is with your overall personal wealth, which can be either penniless, hard up, flush, moneyed, or gilded. You start off hard up, or you can downgrade yourself to penniless and pick up 5 extra starting chips. Chips are silver coins used to buy items, weapon upgrades, and the like. It's also worth noting here that if you don't start off penniless, then you'll start with a calling card, which is a personal possession of the Mavericks that has sentimental value. Once per session, if you're able to invoke a calling card in a skill check, then you get an ace, which is a meta currency we'll discuss in a minute. The final step is to choose a role for your coat, hat, and belt. And there you have it, a Maverick ready to set out and face the weird. Mechanics, skill checks. Skill checks in this game are meant to be made anytime the outcome is uncertain or potentially dangerous. You really don't want to be rolling checks on mundane or extremely easy actions. The way they work is that the player first announces what they're trying to do. Then the trail boss determines the most appropriate attribute and skill combination for that action. But remember, players can always suggest their own combination as long as it's in good faith, and the trail boss should probably allow it. Once that's been settled, you need to determine if there are any raises or busts that apply to the situation. In D&D parlance, this is advantage and disadvantage, and it applies the same way, except it shows up as raising or lowering a die type on one of your 2 dice. Then there are possible aces that are spent to further modify the dice before rolling. But let's get to the roll and then I'll explain aces. When you roll your dice, you're trying to get your sum of the two dice to meet or exceed 10. If you do, that's a success. If you don't, then the skill check fails. Aces are the game's meta currency, meant to represent a Maverick's expertise and luck. The most common way to pick up an ace is when you roll a check and your sum is 2 more than the target number of 10. For every 2 over, you get another ace. You can save up to 4 aces for another turn, but in the case that you have 4 aces already and you make a big roll that earns you 4 more aces, you have to spend 4 aces on that turn or you'll lose them. In other words, the max number of aces you can save at the end of your turn is 4. Spending aces to help yourself out is called sweetening the pot, and in the course of play, you'll find yourself constantly spending these aces. Scrapes, or combat. If combat is initiated in the fiction, then a Maverick in a party will always take the first turn unless the party has been ambushed by the enemy. Each Maverick is afforded 1 simple action and 1 complex action per turn, but spending aces and using certain traits can increase the number of actions per turn. Once that first turn is done, it's the enemy's turn, and it goes back and forth between Maverick and enemy until everyone's done and a new round begins. When it's the enemy's turn, the trail boss will draw a card from a full deck, jokers included, and that card will determine the enemy's strategy or behavior. This card draw is referred to as the ante-up. So for example, if the trail boss has a scarecrow facing off against Mavericks and a 9 of clubs is drawn, that means the target is an at-hand Maverick. At-hand means very close range. And the threat is a minor injury, meaning if the player's defense roll fails, then they pick up a minor injury. Had that club been a face card, then the threat would have been a condition called bushed with a severity of D10. But essentially, that ante-up card draw is the enemy's action, and it's up to the player to roll to see if they resist the attack in this example. Wyrd Die. All defensive or reactive checks in the game are rolled with 1 attribute plus the Wyrd Die. The Wyrd Die is going to go up and down between D6, D8, D10, and D12 throughout the course of a session, and you're always wanting it to be at its highest because the higher it is, the better likelihood that you'll meet or beat a 10 on a defensive roll. In the example of the Scarecrow, the player might roll their quick to defend, and that would include their Wyrd Die, wherever that is currently. If their quick was a D10 and their Wyrd Die was currently at D10, that would be 2D10. But remember, the trail boss is going to take into account raises and busts, which come from special abilities, circumstances, and the environment. Let's say that our guy has the high ground and we argue that it gives him a raise on his defense roll. That would upgrade one of those D10s to a D12. Then we roll that and get an 8 in total. That would mean the Scarecrow was able to inflict that minor injury. There are no hit points in Huckleberry. Instead, you have 6 slots for 3 different kinds of injuries. The name and detail of the injury actually doesn't matter at all. That's just narrative flavor. What matters is the severity of the injury, minor, moderate, and major. You can take up to 3 minor injuries, after which they are recorded as 1 higher severity or whichever slot is available. Once you have no more slots left to fill, your next injury, regardless of its severity, will make your Maverick laid low. When this happens, your Wyrd Die resets to a D10, and the Maverick picks up the Aces and 8s ailment, and the trail boss draws a card. If that card is an ace or a joker, then your Maverick is miraculously no longer laid low and can remove 1 injury without gaining a scar. If the card is a face card, then the Maverick has the option to make a deal with the devil. This deal can be anything, but it should be something personalized and agonizing to fulfill. If the Maverick accepts the deal, then they remove all injuries but gain a scar. If they reject the deal, then they have 1 day to find a doctor or sawbones before they bite the dust. If the trail boss on the laid low draw pulls a number card, that number is how many sundowns the Maverick has to live. But here's the fun part. The trail boss doesn't reveal this number, so you never know how long you have if the draw is a number card. One quick word about scars. In most cases, when you're laid low, you're going to pick up a scar. The scar is described any way you want, and it confers to you 1 step die increase of any of your 4 abilities to a maximum of D12. That's nice, but the deal is that once you pick up your 3rd scar, your Maverick is meant to retire from play. Ailments. With any given enemy, there is a chance of picking up an ailment. Think of these as conditions, and in Huckleberry, they're pretty brutal. Each ailment has a die rating, and when you pick one up, you record the ailment and the die. Then you roll that die to see if you suffer from the ailment on that turn. If you roll a 1, 2, or 3, then you don't suffer that round, but a 4 or higher means that you do. Which is to say, the bigger the die type for an ailment, the higher the chance that you'll suffer that ailment. At the beginning of every turn in combat, you have to roll on all of your current ailments to see if you suffer them for that round. The main way to treat an ailment, especially in combat, is to use a complex action to patch yourself up. You'd make an attribute plus skill roll for this, whatever combination the trail boss figures or which you can successfully rationalize, and the hope is to meet or beat a 10 with your sum. If you succeed, the ailment goes down 1 die type. Only if it's at a D4 and you land a successful patch-up roll will the ailment go away completely. There's one special ailment called Aces and Eights, and it actually doesn't have a die type associated with it. You pick this one up after getting laid low with too many injuries, and the only way to get rid of it is to engage in a pastime. Pastimes. Huckleberry doesn't use a map. Instead, the Weird West is a place where there are jobs, bounties, and quests here and there, and at the center of it all is the place where you hang your hat, your so-called hole in the wall. It can come in any shape or form imaginable, maybe like a small town or an outpost, and it's where your Maverick goes between missions to engage in pastimes. These are activities that materially advance you mechanically. Bronc bustin', for example, will tame a wild animal or upgrade an existing ride. Doctoring might be required to remove moderate or major injuries. Gunsmithing is how you add mods to your big irons. These mods can significantly increase the efficacy of your weapons. Learning is how you upgrade the dice on each of your skills. It takes 2 stretches of learning to upgrade a skill by 1 die, but you can only upgrade any skill 1 time. Philosophizing for 2 stretches will allow you to choose a second disposition, or 3 stretches of it to replace an existing disposition. Printin' Legend has the soft narrative effect of increasing a Maverick's influence in their hole in the wall, but after 4 stretches of doing this, they can pick up a legend trait, which is a significant little upgrade to their character mechanically. They can have up to 2 legend traits. Running Huckleberry is all about facilitating big cinematic moments rather than being adversarial to your players. Your job as trail boss is to support and encourage the Maverick's actions while preserving the story's authenticity and honesty. Remember, the Mavericks are the only protagonists in Huckleberry. Everyone you portray is supporting cast in their stories. Every Maverick is competent and capable, never to be described as fumbling or inept without the player's consent. If the Maverick is unsure about performing a task, ask where they might have learned such a skill. This develops both backstory and the current narrative. Mavericks are especially capable of performing any stereotypical Wild West trope like riding horses, lassoing cattle, or shooting guns. When running scrapes, keep the pace quick and punchy. Encourage Mavericks to make fast decisions on their turn. Better to make a suboptimal choice than no choice at all. Don't be afraid to activate the same hostile multiple times if other hostiles aren't positioned to threaten the Mavericks. Think about difficulty in terms of entire bounties, not single encounters. Mavericks are highly dangerous individuals who can defeat most anything in a fair fight, but injuries are slow to heal and allow you to dial up the pressure as the bounty progresses. Raises and busts are your best tools for adjusting difficulty on the fly. Most questionable actions can be resolved by simply applying a raise or bust, keeping the game moving at a fast pace. Look for reasons to affirm raises rather than deny them. When it comes to clues, use the 3-tier system. Open clues are freely available just by being present, hidden clues require searching specific areas, and locked clues need successful skill checks. Never end a scene without revealing the open clues. They provide the information necessary to solve a bounty. When Mavericks want to sweeten the pot in new ways, work with them to find creative solutions. Most ideas will fit neatly into the standard options, but don't be afraid to negotiate back and forth to find something that works for the story. When folk or hostiles interact without Maverick involvement, use common sense rather than slowing things down with dice rolls. And finally, weave the scene together by combining raises, busts, aces and antes into a coherent story, but let each maverick describe how their actions resolve while you tie it all together. That's about it for the tutorial, but there are a lot more little mechanics and edge cases that we didn't cover here. The core rulebook includes guidance on what each attribute and skill are actually intended for, how to style your horse, movement rates in combat, frontier medicine, a bunch of plot hooks for the trail boss, and 24 Wyrd West enemies, along with guidance on how to create your own enemies. Links are below to where you can find Huckleberry, and if you have any questions about the rules, leave them in a comment down below and we'll get you sorted. Thanks as always for watching. Happy hunting.